Alright, howdy y'all, welcome back to Luke's Home Brew. Today we are going to go over very quickly in a short 5 to 10 minute video how to build a character sheet, starting at just rolling your hit dice and rolling your ability scores, and then proceeding to implement all of your abilities. This is for if you are writing it down on a character sheet or doing it in PDF like I am showing you right now. This is not for D&D Beyond, even though we will be using D&D Beyond as a source so I can actually show you abilities as we are building our character. But for starters, let's go ahead and start with a character name because that's always important. And let's do one of my older characters. We'll do Eli Bearheart. And today we are going to use my favorite class, and that is going to be a Warlock. And we're going to only do it first level because pretty much at higher levels it gets very repetitive and makes for a long video. But we are going to use a human. Our background, which we will get into as we look it up, will be a Outlander. Just make it short and simple. That seems to be the most common one. And then our alignment as a Warlock. Alright, the Warlock that we are going to be going for is going to be a Fiend Pact Warlock. He is going to, I think we're going to choose Asmodeus because he's a cool guy and hashtag supernatural and liked evil KFC, Mr. Evil Colonel Sanders. But we are going to use the Fiend. We just pulled it up on D&D Beyond. So let's go ahead and mark that into our character sheet that we are going to be a Fiend Pact. Alright, and then our alignment is, it's going to be more evil, but I don't want him to start out evil. I want to have him in the later levels as he's asked to do more and more that really tests his morality to be slowly turning evil. But from a start, I want him to be more neutral and have a code. So I'm going to say lawful neutral, or LN for short. Now that we got this up, we can go ahead and put our name in there. And then typically, I don't use experience points in my own campaigns, but we're going to leave that at 0 because we are a first level character. So we'll put that right there. Now for the rest of this, what I'm going to do is we are going to start by rolling our ability scores. And then we are going to add our race afterwards because that affects our ability scores. And then from there, we are going to pick our background, as that's going to give us a few proficiencies, and then we're going to go from there. All right? So let's go ahead and pull up our race, and it's very easy. We can just open a new tab, and then search in human D&D 5e. And you're going to have a few options. You can either use Roll20, D&D Beyond. I like D&D Beyond a little bit better. It's a little bit more clean cut. Looks like the player handbook. But we can scroll through all the fun text that kind of just describes them in the Forgotten Realms. And really get into the meat and potatoes, which is really going to be our ability scores. So our ability scores all increase by 1. Age doesn't, we're all humans, I hope. Alignment is up to you. Size is 5 to 6 foot, but really we're all humans. We should know varies. Our walking speed is 30 feet, languages, but we'll get into that. And then we got the variant human, which we will pick for the purposes of clarity. So let's go ahead and go to our online die roller. I pulled up this one. It is brockjones.com die roller. Link should be in the description. But I'm going to use my 4d6, drop the lowest. So let's go ahead and roll that. And then here's our rolls. So we got a 15, a 12, 14, 13, 12, and 11. So honestly, those are really good rolls for a starting character. We don't have anything crazy. Our highest stat's going to be a 16. But once we add our human modifiers. But even then, a starting of a 16 and the rest are at least +1s or so. That's really, really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that in. And since we're playing a Warlock, we want to go ahead and scroll up to our chart. And we're going to see that really their saving throws really represent the two ability scores that you should put the most effort into making your highest stats. You could go a high dex warlock, but if you're min-maxing, these tend to be the best. Obviously, high dex means high armor class, high constitution means high hit points, so it's up to you and how you want to play the character. But we're going to make wisdom and charisma the two highest stats, with charisma being higher just because that's our spellcasting ability modifier. So what we'll do is slowly copy that in, and I'll catch you when I do. Alright, so we just inputted our stats, and I ordered them how I wanted to, taking into account that we are going to make some changes as we introduce our race ability score improvements. But as of now, our charisma is going to be 15, 14. He's going to be a pretty smart guy. He's going to have 13 constitution, 12 dex, and 11 strength. As we're going to be a spellcaster, we're not going to be swinging a greatsword. So, before we add in the ability score modifier, which always goes in this little bubble, we are going to go ahead and look at our human now that we set these up. So we'll go back over here, go back to human, and like I said earlier, instead of using the normal human, we're going to use the variant human. So with that, the first ability is 2 different ability scores of your choice are increased by 1. So we'll start with that. And looking at our stats, we definitely want to increase charisma because our ability score modifier, so for example, a 15 would be a +2 to any d20 die roll that you're making using charisma, over a 16 is a +3. So every even number increases that modifier by 1. So +10, or a 10 would be +0, a 12 would be +1, a 14 would be +2, and charisma would be +3, and so on. So with that, now that we've permanently changed it, we know it's not going up any higher. We can add our modifier, which is going to be +3. And then we have one more to increase by 1, and I'm going to pick Constitution for that, because Constitution not only gives you additional hit points, as it also increases your ability to maintain concentration on spells. But now that we've increased those with our race ability score improvement, we are now going to just fill in the rest. So 11 is +0, 12 is +1, 12 is +1, and then 14 is +2. So these are our final ability scores. These will increase as you level up if you're using a similar build or copying this build. But as of now, these are really good stats for a first level character. They're not glamorous. We don't have an 18 or a 20, but they're good. And that's what we're going for. So now that we got this all situated, we can proceed to go back to our human race. We get 1 proficiency in 1 skill of your choice, and we get to choose 1 feat. We'll get back to the feat after we do the skill. So once we get into this part, we could pick any skill that we want. However, I like to go back to our class and make sure that we're not picking a skill that we could get from our class instead, or from our background. So let's pull up our background as well. Alright, so I couldn't find a D&D Beyond link for our background Outlander. I'm sure it exists, but I just pulled it up on D&D 5th edition wiki. This I found is a reliable source of information for D&D. I've never seen an incorrect bit of information from here. So I commonly use it when referencing stuff in my own games. But by choosing the background of Outlander, we are going to get the skill proficiencies of athletics and survival. So what we can do is go ahead and add that to our character, since we know we're definitely getting those, we don't get a choice. And then athletics and survival. So we just fill in the little bubble right there. If you're using pencil, you just pencil it in. And then now we go ahead and look at our class, because our class gives us a set of different options to choose. And our race allows us to pick any 1 skill. So to make it so we don't accidentally pick something with the human that we're going to probably pick from the warlock class, we're actually going to pick our warlock stuff and then add our final ability or skill proficiency from our race. I hope that makes sense. So we are going to pick 2 skills, and right now I feel like our character is going to be someone who's been out in nature, has worked, and perhaps his village or hamlet was attacked by werewolves, bandits, whatever you want to call it, and perhaps someone close to him died, and that's why he created that deal with this fiend, Asmodeus, to try and bring that friend back, or maybe it was his wife or something like that. So we're going to want to pick skills that represent who he was before turning to adventure, before turning to being a warlock of Asmodeus. That being said, if you feel like being a power gamer, I highly recommend the skill investigation, and I also highly recommend the skill of deception. Those are 2 common ones that I tend to use in my own campaigns. Intimidation tends to be a little lackluster. People prop it up to be a little bit higher, but I tend to find deception is used more often. Arcana is good and is commonly interchangeable with history. And then religion is kind of that oddball between Arcana and history. I rarely call for religion checks when I call for Arcana or history checks. Hope that makes sense. So typically, if you're going to power game this, I would recommend investigation and deception. However, in this, we are going to pick nature and investigation, just to represent that our character has a little bit of background in nature, and also allow us to be a little useful in dungeons and investigatory situations. So those are our skills. Now we get to pick one from our race, as you remember, that we get to pick out of all of these. And out of all of these, I am going to pick probably, let's do persuasion. And the reason why I say that is probably persuasion's one of the most used ones, and also I'm seeing his relationship with Asmodeus as a constant battle of asking for more from him while trying not to get himself into a too heated situation where he might step on Asmodeus's toes, or the scion of Asmodeus's toes. But let's move on. So now that we got that, we have a few other abilities left from human before we can just close this tab. So we can write down our age, and that's normal. The last thing that we need are our speed and our languages. So our base walking speed is 30 feet, so we can fill that in, 30 feet. And that is the speed that you'll use. Typically, spellcasters in general, that speed is not going to change. However, if you're a barbarian or monk, that will increase. Now, our languages, this a lot of just kind of flavorful text. We know how to speak common and one extra language of your choice. That's the only sentence that matters. The rest of that is just kind of flavorful speech to kind of act as filler. So what we can do is go ahead and down here. This is where I like to put my my tool proficiencies, weapon proficiencies, and my languages. So I'm gonna type down languages, and then here I just put a little hyphen and I say common, and let's pick Sylvan. Nah, we're gonna pick Infernal. Alright, so now that we got our languages picked, obviously Infernal is to speak with devils, and then common is pretty much shorthand for English if you're an English speaking player, Japanese if you're a Japanese speaking player. That's just what that means if you're a new player. Otherwise, let's move on. So we're completely done with the human race, and then we can finish our Outlander, and then we can fill in our class. So we get one tool proficiency specific to music. So let's go ahead and type in proficiencies. And then we are going to put in guitar. Now I don't know how to spell that. Drums. All right, he knows how to use a drum. He's a cool guy. And then we get one additional language from being a Outlander. So what we're going to pick is we are actually going to pick Sylvan, like we were earlier, to represent our experience in nature. Perhaps we've run into a Fey spirit here or there. And then I believe that's it. This feature called Origin or feature called Wanderer typically aren't used, but we'll cover them quickly. You've been to strange places, seen what other people haven't. Choose one that kind of best characterizes your character. Are you a forester, trapper, homesteader, hunter-gatherer, tribal marauder? So you can either roll for that or go ahead and pick. We are going to choose exile or outcast. Doesn't really do all too much for you. It's just descriptive and kind of helps you decide on how you want to role play. But for Wanderer, you have excellent memory for maps, geography, and can always recall general layout of terrain and just know where to find food generally in an area that you've been or seen. So what we'll do is in the features and traits area, we will just put Outlander knows terrain. It can be very shorthand, those like 3 sentences long that we just read. And obviously we're not going to have enough space, including all the abilities that we're going to get as we get to higher levels. So I recommend just using shorthand that you just will know and be able to reference that back to that paragraph that you read. But that is everything that we get for our background. The rest of this is just suggestions for role playing, but you don't need to worry about that if you are just caring about the mechanics. Next, we can move on to our class, finally. So, like I said, we are building a warlock. So, this is your table. This is going to be your godsend. This is going to be your Bible. This is going to be your map. So, we're at first level. So, this highlights everything that you get at first level. So, your proficiency bonus is going to be +2. And we get 2 abilities that we will see later on. And then we get 2 cantrips, 2 spells, 1 spell slot of first level. And then invocations we have none of, as we get those at second level. So, at first level, as we just scroll down, we see that our hit dice is 1d8 per warlock level. And our hit points are 8 plus your constitution modifier. So, what we can do is scroll up. Our proficiency bonus, like we said, was +2 earlier. And then we said our hit dice was 1d8. So we put that in there. And then down at this bottom section, that's where I tally mark off how many I've used. So at later levels, say your 15th level, this would be 15d8. Next, we have our hit point maximum. And like we just said, it is 8 plus our constitution modifier. So that will be 10 or 8 plus 2, which is a total of 10. And that progressively goes up. At first level, as your first character level, you always get the maximum hit points of your class. So if you're playing a fighter, your hit dice would be a d10, in which case your hit point maximum at first level would be 10 plus your constitution modifier. But moving on, our hit points at higher levels, this just highlights after a level up, you roll 1d8 or add the average of 5 plus your constitution modifier per warlock level after first. Next is your proficiencies, so that's going to be your bottom left box. We get light armor and simple weapons. So we'll go ahead and throw that in there. So throw another hyphen, light armor, simple weapons. I lied, this isn't going to be a 5 to 10 minute video, but that's okay. Next we have saving throws. It is going to be wisdom and charisma, like we said earlier, and then we already picked our skills. So let's highlight wisdom and charisma for your saving throws. Now, it is very important to distinguish that these are not your ability scores, as you can gain proficiency in these. So when a DM calls for just a strength check, that is when you use this box. When a DM calls for a strength saving throw, that's when you use this box. I hope that makes sense. But now that we've got all our proficiencies lined up, we can now apply these numbers into these different boxes. Now, if we were to copy strength into our strength saving throw, that would be 0 because we have a +0 to our strength. But if we were to go over here to charisma, where we have the bubble filled in, meaning we are proficient, we add our +3 from charisma, but then we also add our proficiency bonus, which would be +5. Same thing for your skills. So acrobatics would be dexterity, as it says right here. Highlighting it didn't work, but it says dexterity right there, so we're going to use our +1, and we're not proficient, so it's just a simple +1. So let me fill those out for you, and I'll jump cut to where it's all filled out. Alright, so we just filled them all out, so we just added our modifiers to everything. Pretty straightforward and simple. So next we will go ahead and head back to our class. Next we get to choose our equipment. We are going to choose a, we get various different choices. So A, we could pick a light crossbow and 20 bolts, or any simple weapon. In addition to that, we can pick a components pouch or an arcane focus. Mechanically, they do not have any difference. It is more of a difference of how you want to roleplay your character. A components pouch is a bag or satchel that you carry with a twig struck by lightning or a eye of a newt, where a arcane focus is perhaps a gem that you carry that channels your magic. You can pick a scholar's pack or a dungeoneer's pack, and then you get leather armor and any simple weapon and 2 daggers. So you already start at level 1 with these choices, so we are going to go pretty simple. We're going to pick any weapon, so we are going to actually have him just have a dagger. For that selection right there, we are going to pick an arcane focus, and we are going to pick a scholar's pack. No, we're going to pick a dungeoneer's pack. We're going to pick a dungeoneer's pack, an arcane focus, any simple weapon, and then we get all of this. So let me go apply that to our character sheet, and I will jump cut there. Alright, so we added our simple weapons and armor. So we picked 4 daggers, since we got 2 from just base, and then we get 2 choices of any simple weapon, so I just picked 2 more daggers. And I will try and throw up an image to show you all of the weapon choices that you would be able to get, but we just chose daggers for simplicity. This is typically how I annotate it. It's just 4 times dagger, and then our attack bonus, I'll break that up for you, is equal to our proficiency bonus so long as we are proficient in the weapon, plus our dexterity or strength for daggers because they are light weapons. However, if we were to use a club, for example, that would be a much more strength-based weapon. It should also be in the chart. So we would add our strength modifier, and if we are proficient in clubs, that is when we add our proficiency bonus. Now this row right here is to add to your d20 roll on attacking someone. So if the DM calls for an attack roll, you add this number right here, and when the DM says that you hit, that is when you roll your damage dice, which is a non-d20 dice. So for daggers, for example, it would be 1d4, and then since it is a light weapon, we get to add our dexterity or our strength. Obviously, we're going to use dexterity because we got that +1 bonus over +0. And so total, if we were to hit an enemy with a dagger, it would be 1d4 plus 1 damage. And after that total, that's what you tell the DM. But after that, we have our leather armor, and leather armor, I have it pulled to the side, is 11 plus your dexterity, and that is equal to your armor class. So 11 plus your dexterity, I don't write that, I just write down the total. So 11 plus 1, and it's our dexterity modifier, not our dexterity score, so it wouldn't be 23, it would instead be 12. So our armor class is what the DM uses to see if they can hit us with an enemy. So if they make an attack roll against us with a dagger, and they have a +3 attack bonus and 1d4 damage, +1, they have to roll a d20 and add +3, and whatever that total is, it has to equal or exceed 12. I hope that makes sense. Next, we have our Dungeoneers pack. Let me go copy that down and then I'll get back to you, but that is just a plethora of equipment that your character gets to start with, such as a crowbar, torches, a matchbox, mess kit, stuff like that you're not commonly going to use, but it's very good and handy to keep on the side, just because a lot of DMs reward creative players for coming up with creative solutions, and that is a plethora of different tools that you have that I commonly find players forget about. So let me copy that over and I'll get right back. Alright, so we just added it. We got those red squiggles just because it's all together, but that is those are our equipment. So we got a backpack, obviously, since it's a Dungeoneers pack, crowbar, a hammer, pittons, which are giant nails that typically rock climbers use to scale slopes and mountains. We have torches, 10 of them, a tinderbox, a rations, 10 of those, a water skin, and 50 feet of hempen rope. Alright, so that is our equipment. So now we can move on to our actual ability scores, or abilities from the class. So as we finish that, literally it's just linear. You just go down the list, and this is how you do your abilities for your character. So at first level, you get an otherworldly patron. You have struck a bargain with an otherworldly entity. We chose the Fiend, and then it says you get to choose these abilities at 1st, 6th, 10th, and 14th level, and we will see those later on. Subclasses are always at the end of the rules and abilities of the main class, so you just have to skip to the end of the book, but we're going to continue going on as it describes Pact Magic. Now, Warlocks are a little particular. They have some special rules, but mainly what you have to concern yourself with is instead of normal spellcasters getting their spell slots back at the end of a long rest, Warlocks get their spell slots back at the end of a short rest, and otherwise their cantrips are the same. You are welcome to read this as you are reading along, but let's move on to the meat and potatoes, the mechanics. So, our spell save DC, these are 2 formulas that I recommend copying and pasting actually into your character sheet. And I typically just throw them in Treasure or wherever you want to put them. That way they're on your character sheet, so as you level up, maybe you level up in the middle of a session, you can't refer to a video or anything like that, and it's just a quick, ooh, boom, your proficiency bonus went up, so how do I make my actual spell save DC and spell attack bonus go up, respectively? So, if we follow these formulas, our spell save DC is equal to 8 plus our proficiency bonus plus our charisma modifier. And since we are a warlock, charisma is going to be our spellcasting ability for our spells. So our spell save DC is equal to 8 plus our proficiency bonus, which you saw earlier is plus 2, plus our charisma modifier, which is plus 3. So our spell save DC is going to be a 13. It's not remarkably high, but as you level up, you'll be surprised to see how high that goes. Now, our spell attack modifier is just the same exact thing. It's your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier, but we don't have that plus 8 value. So right now, it is just a plus 5, which is not terrible. That is the average. Next, after we add those in, we can go ahead and we can ignore your Eldritch Invocations because it is at 2nd level. And you can also see that in our chart, our Bible, our map, we have only 2 abilities, Otherworldly Patron and Pact Magic. Now, if you're following along, you'll see Otherworldly Patron was our first one, and Pact Magic was our second one. And they all go in order between 1st to 20th level. So we'll slowly go through here. Invocations are an ability that you get at 2nd level. There's a whole plethora of choices that you get to choose from that. Your ability score improvements start at 4th level and continue on. And then here are your later level abilities. And you finally round out with your 20th level ability. But what we are looking for is now our subclass, as that is the last thing we need to fill out before our character is completely built and ready for your first session as a 1st level Warlock of the Fiend. So, You chose the Fiend. This is just some flavor text for you, some ideas of different patrons such as Demogorgon, Orcus. We chose Asmodeus. So now you get an expanded spell list. And these are spells that you get to choose as like additional choices for your Warlock spell list. Now, these spells are not specifically given to you. So they're not like the Cleric where they are automatically handed to you. These are just additional choices that you get to pick from. So we are not going to use any of these just because our character isn't going to use Burning Hands or Command, but these are additional options in addition to the normal spells that a Warlock would normally be able to choose. Now, if we continue on, just like earlier, everything is ordered in the level that you get it. So 1st level, 6th level, 10th, and 14th. So our 1st level ability is Dark One's Blessing. Starting at 1st level, when you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your Charisma modifier plus your Warlock level, minimum of 1. So what we can do is we'll just copy and paste that into our character sheet. If you're writing it down, I apologize for your hands. So Control V. And then that is our 1st level ability. Easy peasy, copy and pasted. If you wanted to, what you can do is remove this first section since we know you already got it, just to save space as you get into higher levels. And then we'll capitalize that. When you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, gain temporary hit points equal to your Charisma modifier plus 1, minimum of 1. Obviously, we know we're 1st level, so there we go. And then put a period on that. It's up to you. But that is our 1st level ability. Next, we go ahead and check and make sure that we don't have anything else that we get. But that is it. That is your 1st level Warlock. Now all you have left is to pick your spells. Alright, so now when we're picking our spells for a spellcaster, your spell list is specific to whatever class you are playing. So if you're playing a Warlock, we will be using our Warlock spells. If you're playing a Cleric, you will use Cleric, etc. Now, this chart is going to be your guide when getting to know how many cantrips you know, or 0 level spells, how many spells with a level, such as 1st through 9th. As you level up, you get higher levels, and then how many spell slots you have. Warlocks are a little specific as they get less spell slots, but they get them back on short rests. And finally, your spell slot level increases pretty much every 3rd level. So 1st and 2nd, you'll have 1st level spells. 3rd level and 4th level, you have 2nd, and so on and so forth until you reach 9th level for a normal spellcaster, or at 9th level total, you reach 5th level spell slots and you stagnate on the Warlock end of everything. But let's pick our cantrips. So what we'll do is we have 2 choices. So we can go over here and pick any 2 of these spells. So we are going to choose Eldritch Blast because that is unfortunately the best Warlock spell or spell in the game and the cantrip level. And then we are going to choose Minor Illusion because we want to be able to make maybe Mockingjay sounds. Maybe our character chose this to be able to be a better hunter, perhaps. So we will go ahead and scroll down to our 3rd page. This is all for spellcasting. Nothing else goes on here. And then we're actually going to type in that we are a Warlock. And then we will write in Eldritch Blast. And then I typically like to put in how far their range is and if it requires verbal, somatic, or material components. So let me jump cut and fill this all out and then I'll explain. Alright, so we inputted our spells, we have Eldritch Blast, and I always write down what it uses, whether it's an action, bonus action, reaction, whatever it is, I write it down, and then I write down what components of spellcasting it requires. So for Eldritch Blast, it requires V for vocal, and then S for somatic, like waving your hands, and then I always write in the range, so R equals 120 feet, and then Minor Illusion is an action. Now, Minor Illusion typically has somatic and material components. However, if we go ahead and look at our minor illusion spell, it says just a bit of fleece. So a bit of fleece is a material component that would be covered by a component pouch and doesn't cost anything to use. And if you're using an arcane focus covers your material component so long as it does not contain a gold cost. So for example, if it said 100 gold pieces worth of fleece, then our arcane focus would not be able to cover that, and we would actually need 100 gold pieces worth of fleece on us. But instead, it only says just a bit of fleece without a gold cost. We can just ignore the M because we are using an arcane focus. So we can remove that, and then range equals 30 feet. Now let's go ahead and pick our first level spells. Now if we look, we know 2 spells and they are first level. So what we can do is go ahead and pick any 2 of these spells. So we are going to pick Expeditious Retreat and we are going to pick Charm Person. So let me fill those out for you. We're going to use the same method that we did for our cantrips. That way we know for the future exactly what the components are and what the ranges are. And then we have 1 Warlock spell slot, which we regain at short rest. If we are wizards, then we would regain them at long rests, or pretty much any other caster. Warlocks are just special. So let me fill those out, and then we'll round out the class, and that's it. Alright, so what we did was we filled in our 2 spells that we know. They are Charm Person, which costs an action. It requires verbal somatic. Our range is equal to 30 feet. And then you're going to see a D here, which is for duration, and it lasts 1 hour. Next, we have Expeditious Retreat, which is a bonus action, but I shortened it down to capital BA. And then, yet again, it is verbal somatic, and it is concentration. So instead of saying D, I put C equals 10 minutes, and then it is a range of self, so I didn't put a range. I hope that makes sense. This is my method for when I'm inputting spells into my spell list here. That way I don't have to pull up any other app or whatever if I don't need to, and it's all right here in my character sheet. Now, as we head up, we can fill out this stuff. It's all character options, so I won't waste your time. But otherwise, that is all the abilities that we get as a first level human warlock. And then we forgot. Our initiative is going to always be your dexterity modifier. So that is +1. There are a few feats that allow you to add that initiative modifier or make it bigger. So that is that. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed and this was helpful. If it was, please leave a like down below, as those are much appreciated and help grow the channel. Otherwise, have a good one. Thank you very much, and bye.